Hello, I'm Richard Vobes, the Bald Explorer, and I'm out on my quest for England in search of Sussex, and I'm once again at Devil's Dyke here on the South Downs. And of course this is a continuation of my exploration of Arthur Stanley Cooke's fascinating book Off the Beaten Track, which I have a copy here. And if you're following with me, you can download the text, by the way, on the link in the description. We're on chapter 5, and this is from the Dyke, Devil's Dyke, where I am, on a rather blowy day, I have to confess, to Southwick and Kingston, a walk of 5 miles, he says in here. I'm just taking shelter from I don't know what they are, 20-30 mile an hour winds today, which is a bit of a blow, quite literally, excuse the pun, in this square brick building that I think was erected, I'm not sure what period it was erected. I think for the First World War, if I've got my facts right, and I think it was a munitions testing place or a loading place of some description. And I did do a video on Devil's Dyke, and I think this got a mention, but I can't honestly remember. Anyway, that's where I am for the moment, and this is where I'm starting my walk, right up by the pub, which is on the top, and just inside the Iron Age hill forts barrier, which would have been here within the fortifications. Now, in chapter 5, right at the beginning, Arthur says, as you gain the grass after leaving Dyke station, so clearly he comes back up on the Dyke Railway from Brighton up to Aldrington and then up to the top, and I've made a video trying to explore the pathway of the original track, which is no longer there. He says, and if you look westward, beyond the range of the ladies' golf links, which I understand that 100 years ago, the golf club, and as it says, the golf links, was in this area, just the other side of these fortifications, I think, and it's no longer there, it's been moved. But 100 years ago when he was here, yeah, the ladies were playing their golf, it would appear. Anyway, looking westward, we should see near the North Ridge a double line of firs at the edge of the cultivation, and firs is the old name for gorse. We call it gorse now, but if you read all these old books, they'll talk about the South Downs being covered in firs, F-U-R-Z-E. Fascinating. This firs flanks a cart track which will bring you to a dead stop of plough or crop. It's not very wide, and treading carefully you can cross it, and then you'll reach a coombe almost at its end. I have no idea where that is. I have looked around, but I've absolutely no idea where that is. But he is heading towards Mile Oak, and there's lots of pathways that we can follow. So I'm going to select one which is the most likely and start my journey there. I'm just skirting along the ridge at the moment on the north face. Now, I don't think this is where Arthur came. I think he actually was probably a little further south, because he'd come up via the railway, as we said earlier, and the chances are he didn't bother to come up onto the north bit. But I wanted to come up here because it's just great to see the view, and also to point out that behind me there is Fulking, where I was walking in the last little series of 4 from Hangleton to Edberton, or Edberton, and one of the places was Fulking that I went through, and that's just down there, and you have the escarpment, and I've made subsequent little video coming up the side on the Fulking Hill where you get to walk on the South Downs Way. Now, I'm actually going to go a little on the South Downs way, but I'm going to turn south. I think it's on the Sussex Border Path. That's the plan. So I think that should take me back down towards Mile Oak. It may not be the precise route, but the landscape is pretty similar, so we'll get an idea of what he was looking at. The main thing is the destination. Sussex Border Path, that's it. It's interesting that you come over this great long down behind me, and for a while there I thought if I carried on I'd end up heading back home to Worthing. Now from this point you can get to see some fantastic views, and you can really work out why Arthur would take you over this down and at this point, because you can see over to Brighton. Of course Brighton's changed rather dramatically since Arthur's time, of course. You can see down towards Shoreham with the power station and Mile Oak is sort of more in that direction. But amazingly, you see right across to Worthing and the huge conurbation that Worthing has become, which is a great worry really, and you can see how the intrusion into this downland scape is happening all the time. Right, let's crack on. Do you know, I might just duck out the wind for a moment, because although it's June and I'm filming in June and the wind is quite blowy, it's quite cold. It's a cold westerly wind. Now I've always been confused about the wind, whether it's the direction it's going in or the direction it's coming from, and people have told me that it's the direction it's coming from, which I suppose in a way is counterintuitive to me, because I think, you know, if it's heading off in a northeasterly direction, I would think of it as a northeasterly wind, but it's the other way around. Anyway, it is what it is. So I'm just ducking down. I guess I must be halfway now down towards Mile Oak, which is where I'm going. Arthur, in his book Off the Beaten Track, he gives us bits of history of the places, but he's not very good on the actual route. He doesn't publish any maps in the book, which I find a little disappointing really. I guess if you are one of his readers, and I think originally the book came about as of subscriptions, and back in those days you could publish books that way. You could get numerous people to pay a bit like the way I operate the patronage for my YouTube channel, is you get a number of people to pay a bit, and then he would have enough money to make a print run and publish the book. I think that's how the first one came about. Certainly his other book, Downland Songs and Idylls, you see a list in the back of all the subscribers. But my point of saying that is that I reckon that he, you know, these people knew the area quite well, and so perhaps these routes were a lot more well known. Although, of course, part of the book is the fact that it is off the beaten track, come down here off the beaten track. But I'm guessing because the downs are so wide and open and not so intensively farmed as they were, as they are today, the route doesn't overly matter. You're sort of just wandering in the general direction. Possibly all these fences just weren't there, and that in the 100 years since, we've been delineating the land ownership perhaps a lot more. Sitting down is not getting me to the destination, is it? Well, this path continues down, as far as I can see, down into Mile Oak, and I don't know how much freer or open the landscape was to people just walking as and when they like. We now have all these fences, as I said, and we've got these delineated pathways which restrict what we see because of the intensive farming. There's a lot of crops, and a lot of the pathways are on the side of those crops, and so often we miss the more heritage open parts of the common ground where some of the more wilder flowers are, and we just are skirting round a farmer's field, which since perhaps the Second World War had been dug up and now intensively farmed, but prior to that was a lot more open. Well, I'm going to carry on with my journey, so hopefully the next part won't be quite so windy. So if you've enjoyed it, do give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to follow, like and subscribe, become a patron. Check out some of the other off the beaten track walks in my Search for Sussex series. We've got a few of those going up now, and I'm hoping that we can do more and more. Anyway, until next time, take care. Bye bye. Bye bye.